Hi, welcome back to Transform Your Impact. My name is Alexa Henderson, and I'm so excited to have you here today. We are speaking with entrepreneurs, leaders, and creatives about the keys to success, making a massive difference in the world, making money, and living your life's purpose. Today, I have an awesome human being coming from Los Angeles. He's an actor, he's an entrepreneur, he's a coach. You may have seen him starring in the movie Gold with Matthew McConaughey. He's also been in shows like Better Call. He's also been in shows like Better Call Saul and Nashville. And thanks for joining us so much today, Ben.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, so beautiful. So we're transforming impact here. So will you tell us about some of the awesome things that you're up to?
That's one of my favorite things to do. I have done so many different things in my life, and I was thinking about it not that long ago, and what I realized was all of them really, at the end of the day, fall into social change through art and business. So as you mentioned, I'm an actor, and I've been in Los Angeles. It'll be my 10-year LA anniversary on Sunday. Saturday. Yeah, 2 days from now. So I have been in Los Angeles for the better part of a decade as a working actor. And I've been an entrepreneur really since college. I co-founded a company with one of my best friends in college, and we went on to save college students about $30 million. And that is what started my entrepreneurial journey. And ever since then, I have not worked for other people.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah. So will you tell us more about this, like saving college students $30 million? I mean, that's kind of incredible.
It worked. I mean, it was quite the journey. I learned so much. The very short version is we were essentially helping out-of-state students get in-state tuition and following, their very specific state laws and regulations. So it's kind of like paying someone to do really complex taxes. And so honestly, like the work itself was really, what we were doing was boring, and it was some of the most fun I've ever had. And it's one of the things that I talk with entrepreneurs about a lot, because the actual thing we were doing was not particularly exciting. We're filling out paperwork, making sure people hit deadlines, taxes and student loans and all those kinds of things. But because we were doing it with a purpose, because of the culture that we had with the company, who we were working with, and that everybody was on board, not just with the purpose of what we were doing, and that it was literally allowing kids to go to the college that they wanted to go to, but how we were doing it as a team is what really made all the difference. And so I actually, with that same business partner who I co-founded that company with, we now do basically business consulting. We work with a lot of mostly small and medium-sized businesses on incorporating company culture and growing and scaling their businesses. Generally, when people start a company, people have some great idea and often a lot of hustle to make it work and start to actually make money. But almost no one is taught how to actually build a company in a way that it can eventually, where you don't have to keep working in the company. We entrepreneurs often just create another job for themselves where we're employing ourselves, but there's no way to ever leave, be that sell the company or just be able to step back or, God forbid, go on vacation and have other people do things. So we work on all of the systems and infrastructure that goes into that, but also the company culture. I mean, it's a people-centered thing. And how do you make sure that the people have what they need and that the company's built in such a way that it's not reliant on just one person?
That's awesome. I feel like I need to hire you.
Well, we can absolutely talk about that. And it's been really exciting, and I've learned a lot. I have been on my own growth and personal transformation journey. I went through a specific program about 7 years ago that really was like a deeper catalyst. I mean, I've been doing it my whole life since I was a teenager. I was reading self-help books and all of that. But over the last many years, I've gone through my own personal transformation, and that's led to a lot more of coaching around that, both for individuals and companies. So I've been coaching actors for the last many years on both the business and mindset side of things. And as most people listening probably have experienced, knowledge is one thing and it's important. Like, how do I do something? Where do I go to? What's the best resource? Actually having the knowledge absolutely is important, but it's easy to have the knowledge and then not apply it. And some would say that if you have the knowledge and don't apply it, you don't actually have the knowledge. And a lot of the work I've done in the transformational space and as a coach is around how do we both know those things and then actually work it into our ways of being. Same way with company culture at a company, you know, people will write down their values and say, yes, we believe in transparency. Okay, cool. You can put that poster up on the wall, but if you're not actually living by it and making decisions by it, then it doesn't mean anything. It becomes the joke, right? It becomes the cat poster on the wall that everybody makes fun of. And so in my coaching, either with individuals or with businesses, it's identifying what your values actually are. And then how do you actually use that? Whether that's how you pay people, how you approach customers, prioritizing the decisions you make as a company or as an individual so that you can actually live by the values that you have and share and that there's behavioral accountability to it, which repeatedly has been shown to not just increase the bottom line, but it's just a better way of living, or at least maybe not better, but it certainly leads to happier, more peaceful interactions and communication.
Awesome. Will you talk a little bit about your personal transformation and like life before you got some of these tools and what shifted for you?
Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs in sort of a standard family with the white picket fence and the golden retriever and that whole deal. And my parents split up when I was just before a teenager, really. And my mom moved out. We moved out to a ranch in the middle of nowhere and basically went from suburban city kid to full-on cowboy. I was a bull rider. I was a roper. We had cows, pigs, sheep, all of it. I'm actually a champion sheep and dairy cow showman.
Wow.
And like most kids, I sold my champion sheep and used that money to buy parts to build a computer and got really into technology and was homeschooling throughout much of this. I homeschooled for 6 years. And at that time, too, my family situation really devolved. I had a stepdad who was an abusive alcoholic who eventually went on to commit murder-suicide. And my mom had a lot of mental illness that came that, frankly, she didn't express before. And so it was a really challenging time as a kid. And eventually I moved out and I moved in with my dad. I went to a big public high school and got particularly involved in all those different things. But the core of those experiences were really a lot of the driving force in some healthy ways of wanting to change my situation and not live that way and be around people and have a positive impact. And also, you know, like anyone, those traumatic experiences shaped a lot of the things that were not supporting me, whether it was in my relationships or, you know, many bouts of workaholism that I've gone through. And so as I went through my personal transformational journey, it's like I was saying earlier, a lot of it, I had the knowledge. I'm a nerd and a geek and I love this stuff. So I was reading all the self-help books and I knew these as concepts, but it wasn't really until I started having experiential learning around like, oh, that's where my insecurities show up in my relationships. Oh, that's what it means to act with integrity with someone else. Oh, that's how, and for me, it's been a lot about vulnerability and being able to actually like experience and share my emotions and set boundaries because I've always been able to talk about the things that happened, but not necessarily have an emotional experience around it, either with myself or other people. And so that was a lot of the journey that I went through. And my mom passed away almost 5 years ago now. And when that happened, all 4 of her kids were at the hospital, and that was the first time we'd been together in a decade, all 4 of us in the same room. And I can say with certainty that there's no way that would have happened had us kids not gone through, you know, these transformational experiences. And that has been one of the things that I'm most proud of, is to see the changes that has happened in my family. And as much as I deeply care about business and results and all of those other pieces, it's a constant reminder that the thing that I'm most proud of is the relationship I've created with my family and that transformation.
That's so awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it amazing? I just like it. It wows me every time I think about these trainings and how effective they are. But literally everybody that I've talked to that has done these trainings, it's like I talk to people who are effective in their lives, but then when I talk to people who have done this specific brand of emotional intelligence trainings, it's like, oh yeah, something really, really works there.
It's incredible. And if there were something else that were more effective, I would tell other people to go do that. Like, awesome. Like, whatever the things are that are moving people forward, awesome. There is no one way.
Yeah.
And it is different for each person. But I guess for me, what I found is it opened my eyes to the difference between knowing something and being it. And that was a huge revelation for me of, I can intellectually know someone, and my default setting is often to live in my head, and I'm a nerd and think a lot, and it's easy for me to live in that space. So to translate that into how I'm being, which ironically is really what I get paid to do as an actor. So it's been a very good fit for my life as an actor. And I think there's a part of me that was drawn to acting for that reason, because it puts me, it forces me, as it were, to open up that part of who I am and to explore those messy, yucky, vulnerable parts that I often am resistant to. That's what's most interesting. And it's why we go to the movies. No one goes to watch a movie to see someone living a random Tuesday where nothing happens, feeling just neutral. Like, that's not what we go. Doesn't make a good story.
Yeah, totally. It's true. The acting and the emotional intelligence are like, you're going to be a better actor if you can access your feelings authentically.
Yeah. I mean, and really at the end of the day, I'm essentially getting paid for my ways of being and my ability to be aware of who I am, how I'm communicating, accessing my emotions, and sharing those in a way that give other people permission to do that.
Awesome. Beautiful. Well, one of the things that I loved about what you were talking about when we talked about this interview is social change through art and business. So will you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. It's interesting. I've had these debates since I remember being in college, debating with my roommates about, like, what's the best way to make an impact, right? We talked about, like, being president versus being the richest person in the world, like, which one has more, and all those other things. And interestingly, one of my best friends, Teju, he told me this quote, this Howard Thurman quote, which is, ask not what the world needs, ask what has you come alive. For what the world needs are people who have come alive.
Wow.
And I asked myself that. I said, what is it that has me most come alive? At the time, and what is still true, is that acting is the thing that had me come alive. And when I was younger, my friends were going into nonprofits and starting these social businesses and doctors and all those other things. And I had a lot of judgment around being an actor. And is it a selfish pursuit? Is it about me? And what I've realized is, the more that I'm being what I espouse for other people, that creates permission for people to do it. And I've seen that very tangibly. And the other piece of that is, if I'm committed to making a difference, the what and the how doesn't really matter. I've been committed to making a difference. And so it's showed up in different things I've done in art, which ultimately is what shapes the culture, which to me is the longest term change. I have a background in politics. I worked for Congress and debated about going into politics, and I'm still actively involved with SAG-AFTRA, the performers union. And I care about that long-term change. And so much of what I love about actors and art is that it shifts the culture. And ultimately that is what it takes to have long-term change. And similarly in business, what we work with people on and coach people on is company culture, the values and decisions that people are making that infuses everything. That's what leads to actual change. And I've very much been enamored as well with the change that can happen through business. One, from a sustainability standpoint, in that if an organization is actually making money, you can stick around and keep making change. And that was one of the things that really intrigued me that wasn't what I was thinking. We sort of like, let's start this company, we'll try. And then 20 employees later and all of these, and like, oh my God, look what happened. And I say that story, by the way, which I think helps entrepreneurship sometimes get glamorized. The longer version of that story, which you don't have time for, is, blood, sweat, and tears for insane numbers of hours every day. And it's the same thing with acting. Actors simply are entrepreneurs. We happen to be selling our ability to tell stories, but it's the exact same thing. And I think it does get glorified. And yes, I will say that it's glorious, but I will say also that I've probably spent more, 80 plus hour work weeks than many other people. And that's not like as a badge of honor, just simply as like, that's one of the things that comes with that path. So I always I always get frustrated. People are like, yeah, well, I, did this one thing and one thing led to another and I, had $10 million. It's like, no. What was the one thing that led to another? Well, it was 7 years of incredible effort with
Wow.
a team of people who were all working towards that. So I don't mean to gloss over that story because I think that's the story that often gets missed. And finding, a lot of my transformation has been around embracing and enjoying the journey of that. If I'm not loving what I'm up to on a random Tuesday, then either I get to transform my relationship with what I'm doing, or maybe I need to do something else. And that's okay. There's no shame in that. Actors often decide that they realize, hey, what it actually means to be an actor, the amount of business and marketing and networking that goes into it if you want to make money, that's not what they want to do. And they want to choose something else, and that's okay. Like, there's no shame in that. And I see it with entrepreneurs as well, people who've maybe had a successful business or they've done it for years, and there's often a shame in leaving it and saying, actually, you know what? I want the certainty that comes with a paycheck every 2 weeks. Doesn't necessarily mean it's less risky. Jim Collins, who many people may know from Good to Great and his other books, he said one time, I saw him speak in college, and he said, people aren't risk averse, they're ambiguity averse. And it is certainly more ambiguous to be an entrepreneur. We don't necessarily know where the next paycheck is coming, or the next client, or the industry all of a sudden dramatically shifts and you get to completely change what your business is doing. So it's a lot more ambiguous, but it's not necessarily less risky. And I've watched my own family. My dad was a top attorney. He was a patent and trademark litigator, at the top of his field for decades. And then all of a sudden the economy tanked. Large businesses were not hiring that kind of attorney, and he lost his job. And it was supposed to be like the most secure thing ever, Yeah. So I guess I would just remind the entrepreneurs out there that just because it's more ambiguous, there's a vulnerability that comes with that. So we get to practice that vulnerability that comes with the unknowing, but to remind yourself that it's not necessarily less risky, particularly when other people are telling you, no, what about a real job and safety and security? That's not necessarily it. It just might be less ambiguous.
Yeah, so then it's even more important to have tools to work with your mind around being an entrepreneur.
Imperative to have them.
You absolutely have to be able to go out into the ambiguous world and just know what your vision is and know that you've got what it takes.
Yeah, and to be okay sitting in the uncertainty. That's something that has been a challenge for me. That's not my default setting. I want there to be a right answer, and there's a way to do it, and there's a right way to do it, and probably that's the way that I think it should be done. And so working on, and that's the other gift that acting has afforded me is, there's no right way to act. If you're trying to do it right, then you're getting it wrong. It's about being present and listening and being in the moment and being open and vulnerable. And that's a skill that can be practiced. And it's one of the things that has made me as effective as I am in my business and in coaching, because I'm literally practicing that on a daily basis as an actor, to sit there in discomfort and to have challenging conversations and to navigate emotions that are not our favorite, or to have the guilt or shame that we all carry around as humans, to be able to come up and to be able to actually sit with that and navigate it.
Awesome. Wonderful. So will you tell us, for the viewers who are watching, I mean, you've dropped a lot of knowledge, but is there one thing, if you could, say, that has transformed your impact in the world, or made, shifted your impact the most? What would you say that's been?
Oh man. For me, it really has been embracing vulnerability. That was not my default setting. It's not the training that I had growing up. And frankly, as a kid, it wasn't safe to be vulnerable. It wasn't safe to share my emotions. And so, like most of us, when we experience whatever trauma we experience as children or as teenagers, we create coping mechanisms to deal with that. And often they're really effective. The coping mechanism of putting up walls and living in my head and not sharing my emotions was a really effective way to navigate an abusive situation that was really unhealthy. Now that I'm an adult, when I'm sitting in a meeting, or if I'm, with a romantic partner, those same coping mechanisms, not so helpful. And in fact, they're actually harmful to the goals that I have. So for me, it's really been about practicing vulnerability and even just the basic of having conversations I don't want to have. For me, that's the easiest starting place, is every time there's oh man, I really don't want to talk to that person about that. ah, crap. That means okay, all right. I get to call them now. Like, oh, I can't tell her that. Okay, all right. Yep, that means. So that's been like my easiest reminder is when that voice in the back of my head says, oh, definitely don't do that. Oh, crap. Okay, all right. That's where I get to lean into vulnerability, and paradoxically, that's what has transformed my businesses. When I started embracing that, I mean, literally my business has doubled. Like the revenue doubled. I started booking TV roles as an actor, and so it was as someone who's a very results goal-driven, practically minded person. The idea that how I was being and how I was communicating is what would transform my business. I would not have guessed that at the start, but now I've seen it over and over.
Awesome. Wonderful. So you have a free gift for our viewers.
I do one. It's related to, I have two. So there's one that's related to that. One is, it's my annual planning blueprint. And one of the things that I noticed when I graduated college, I went from 100% structure to 0% structure. And I find a lot of entrepreneurs face this where, we grow up in a school system and an environment that's very structured, which can be really helpful. And most people do well with some sort of external structure, myself included. But it took me a couple of years to learn how to create that structure for myself when I didn't have a class schedule to go to or a boss who's telling me what to do. It's like, I was at home all day today. No one was going to walk into my apartment and, hey, Ben, you're fired. You didn't send that email. I noticed that you were napping. No, that was just on me. And so how do we actually create structures for ourselves? And how do we live that wholehearted life that incorporates family and relationships and all of that? So the annual planning blueprint came out of something I've been doing now for 10 years. My best friend and I guess 9, this is our 9th annual review. My best friend and I drive back to Colorado, where we're from, every year. So it's like a 16 to 20 hour drive, depending on the snow on I-70. And we spend that whole drive to Colorado. And then when we come back to LA, and then often another 20 hours, planning our whole year and coming up with what is the vision and actual goals for every domain of our life, from work, finance, health, service, travel, all of it. And I'm not saying you guys have to spend 60 hours doing it. Though I will tell you, it's been life-changing, especially without the benchmarks that come from a quote-unquote normal job.
Awesome.
But it has very much transformed making sure that I'm living my life in all domains, that I'm enjoying that, and that I'm moving forward in all the different areas that I care about.
Awesome.
And actually putting that to paper. So I have an annual planning blueprint that people can have that I share for free, that's based on now 9 years of doing this process over and over. And then I've also incorporated that into a platform that I've launched it's designed for actors, though the initial, the part that's free, frankly, is, actors are entrepreneurs and it's the same thing. So I have a platform, working.actor, that one of my dear friends and I are launching, that incorporates the goal planning, mindset, vision side of things. The bigger platform is for actors. So if you're in entertainment or you're an actor, all kinds of other resources there for you around your headshots and demo reel and all of that. But for anyone, if you're an entrepreneur, we have packed it full of resources around effectively setting goals, setting your vision, accountability, and those other pieces.
Well, thank you very much. I love your perspective on acting and business and social change through art and business. Like, that's awesome.
It's such a treat to get to talk about it. And it makes, I'm continually inspired. There are so many people out there working on a daily basis to make the world a better place. And it makes me so happy, because it's not the thing that often ends up in the news, because it's not as sensational. Every once in a while, right, one of those stories sneaks through. And I see it every day. I think LA sometimes will get that bad rap of, it's, these vapid people and acting and whatever. And that's just so far from my experience. Like, every single day I'm interacting with everybody who's like, man, how can I use the skills that I have and the talents I have to make the world a better place, to support people, to make sure that people are loving each other and supporting each other and practicing inclusion. And I'm delighted that this opportunity exists to not only share my message with those people, but to hear from everybody else who's doing that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I wanted to bring some of the West Coast love and transformation to the East
Exactly.
Coast. So thank you for
I'm
bringing
sending the
that
sunshine.
here. Totally. Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.